Well, I always wanted to be a writer. When I was a little child, I was always writing things down. And in college, I was writing. And I went out of college and went to work and still writing. And then one day, I won a lyric contest, a song contest. And the winner was to come to Nashville and meet with Tony Brown, a wonderful producer who produces George Strait. And was a keyboard player for Elvis Presley. He's recorded a bunch of wonderful records. And he's producing these young acts that I was sort of mentioning earlier, Mo Pitney. And happy to have him on board. And I got to come here and got to meet Tony and fell in love with Music Row Automatic and went back to, I was living in Florida at the time, and I went back to Florida, packed my wife up, moved to Nashville. I've got a job and then came right down to the Row, and I pretty much have spent the last 34 years.
Been home for 34 years.
On Music Row.
Incredible. Incredible. But just to touch on your songwriting, just for a moment, I've worked with you, so I understand a little bit about you now at this stage.
We wrote a damn song.
Well, the people listening in, I suppose you've written some smashes in your time. I suppose back in the UK and Ireland and around Europe, the most obvious song being "Friends in Low Places" by Garth Brooks. You want to tell me a little bit about that? I know the story, but just to draw you out in it, I think there's a pretty cool story to this song.
Well, my co-writer and myself were sitting over here on 16th Avenue at a little place called the Tavern on the Row.
Awesome. And
we had eaten a big lunch and we were talking about the future, and it came time to pay the tab. We had a couple cocktails, I know, and Dwayne was asking me who's going to pay for this, and I said, don't worry, I've got Friends in Low Places. And Dwayne asked me if I had written it yet, and of course I hadn't, and he asked if he could write it with me, and I said not today. And a year and 4 months later, we were sitting at another place, O'Charlie's, and champagne brunch, making hot sauce for our chicken tenders, trying to outdo each other on our special sauce, and drinking champagne. And I just reached over and got a napkin and wrote "Blame It All on My Roots. I showed up in boots and ruined your black tie affair," and passed it over to
So the
Dwayne.
magic started.
And Dwayne got a big laugh, and he wrote, and we passed back and forth. Then we went over to his condominium and picked up the guitar and just sang it. And it was basically, well, when I'm asked how long did it take you to write the song, I say 38 years and 20 minutes. It actually took about 20 minutes to write.
20 minutes, huh?
20 minutes after
Incredible.
thinking about it for a year and 4 months. It literally did just fall out, and the music as well just fell out. Was one of those that I suppose I had been practicing for this moment.
Yeah. It's been #1 in, I don't have the exact number of countries, but pretty much everywhere.
In the world, recorded by so many, and I lost track. Around 50 million records, I don't know.
50 million records.
Yeah.
It was another extraordinary hit for you, "One Night at a Time," Mr. George Strait. Very successful song.
That was an interesting little song. I wrote that one with Roger Cook and Eddie Kilgallen. And Roger Cook, famous for "If I Could Teach the World to Sing," "Long Cool Woman in a Black Dress," "Here Comes That Rainy Day Feeling Again," "I Believe in Love," "I Want to Dance with You" on George Strait, by the way. And Roger allowed me to come to his publishing house and work with his writers, and we became friends, and we're still friends through all these years. And yeah, he had double booked. I remember it was raining buckets. Came in like a drowned rat and sat down, and he said, "Well, here's the title, One Night at a Time." And I was like, well, I don't know exactly where we're going to go with this. And then he started playing, and oh, all right, I get it. Caught on, and so off we went. Then Eddie shows up about 2/3 of the way through and sits down and puts his magic touch at the end. And wonderful keyboard player, Ricochet, the band Ricochet. And we finished that up, then we went and demoed it on a Tuesday, and the following Wednesday George Strait recorded it. And it was his 38th #1. he's had 60, he's 60 for 60, he's 60 years old, and he's had 60 number one records. Imagine that.
Yeah.
And I'm proud to be number 38.
Absolutely. And my favorite of all your material, Who Are You When I'm Not Lucky, Blake Shelton. What a song.
That's interesting. I had burnout, basically. I was writing all the time. I mean, a person can't, even I love it so much, you can't do it all the time. And that's all I did, just writing songs. And moved to Paris, France, and did Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and Shoot 'em Up, and got to play like a kid again. And for 4 months over there, and then I came back and took 3 years off and just read and worked on a couple projects that were important to me. And one day, 3 years later, I picked up the guitar, and my oh my, you're so good looking fell out of my mouth, and basically wrote it like 20 minutes or so, and went a week later with John Wiggins, the co-writer, and I was like, hey John, I've got this thing, would you like to give it a brush up? And he took it, and then we went another 8 hours on the song.
Okay.
Finished it up, and Joe Nichols recorded it, and then Joe didn't release it as a single, and Blake had heard the song from Joe, and so he said, I'm going to record it on my next project, and did, and released it.
Special.
Number one again.
What does it feel like to get a number one hit as a writer? Even still.
Satisfied.
After all these years.
It's like a satisfaction.
Still to be able to pull it off.
Finally.
It's incredible.
Every time.
Okay.
Every time. I don't want to get my expectations too high, because radio is a big influence, and getting on radio is not the easy. It's easier to go out to a crowd of people and play and get their immediate gratification. So when I'm writing a song, I generally write with 3 chords and the truth. Tell the truth, and never comes out wrong.